Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level Headed News. I'm your host, Brenda. I have three articles in this episode for you. This is primarily about the U.S. demanding the return of the drone seized by the Chinese warships. But I have a editorial at the end of this, so bear with me here. These first two are about this drone. The first one is off NewYorkTimes.com, and it says, the Pentagon on Friday demanded the return of an underwater drone that was seized by China as an American crew was moving in to retrieve it. The episode threatens to increase tensions in a region already fraught with great power rivalries. It had been shadowing the Bowditch, a United States naval vessel in the international waters of the South China Sea, when the Chinese launched a small boat and snatched the unmanned underwater vehicle, the Pentagon said. Ignoring radio demands from the Americans to return the drone, the Chinese ship sailed off. The episode off one of the tensest standoffs between Beijing and Washington in 15 years and occurred a day after the Chinese signaled that they had installed weapons along the string of disputed islands in the South China Sea. The seizure of the drone brought a formal protest from the United States at the time when China is extending claims over South China Sea. And I've got a pop-up here I've got to get rid of. There we go. And is watching the United States and its incoming president with weariness. The episode did not have the life or death drama of the April 2001 mid-air collision between Chinese fighter jet and the Navy surveillance plane that forced the Americans to make an emergency landing on Chinese territory, acknowledging the odd nature of Chinese sailors seizing the drone close to its American mothership, likened it to watching a thief steal a wallet in broad daylight. American officials said they were still trying to determine whether the seizure was low-level action taken by Chinese sailors who spotted the drone, which the Pentagon said was conducting scientific research, or a strategic level action ordered by more senior Chinese leaders to challenge the American presence in those waters. Wanted to return the underwater vehicle immediately, Peter Cook, the Pentagon press secretary, said in a statement Friday, and to comply with all of its obligations under international law. The incident complicates already testy relations between China and the United States, ties that have been further frayed by President-elect Donald Trump's phone call with the president of Taiwan. Mr. Trump angered Chinese officials by holding a phone conversation with President Tsai Ing-wen of Taiwan, an island that Beijing deems a breakaway province of China. It had been nearly 4 decades since a United States president or president-elect had such direct contact with a Taiwanese leader. In an interview broadcast on Sunday, Mr. Trump also criticized China over its trade imbalance with the United States, its military activities in South China Sea, and its links to North Korea. Aides to the president-elect have defended Mr. Trump's words and actions as important to bringing a fresh eye to a number of foreign policy issues. Pentagon officials said on Friday that they were trying to determine if the seizure of the underwater drone had anything to do with Mr. Trump's comments. At the White House on Friday, President Obama was asked about the issue during a news conference. He made clear that he viewed the question of Taiwan as especially sensitive. Refrained from directly criticizing Mr. Trump, he warned his successor to carefully consider his actions and any new policy, lest he ignite a significant response from Beijing. Policies should be subject to fresh eyes, Mr. Obama said, but he added, for China, the issue of Taiwan is important as anything on their docket. The idea of is at the heart of their conception of a nation. And so if you are going to upend this understanding, you have to have thought through what the consequences are, because the Chinese will not treat that the way they treat other issues, he said, adding that the Chinese would not even treat it the way they treated issues around the South China Sea, where we've had a lot of tensions. China experts said on Friday that it was unclear whether the seizure of the American drone was linked to anger in Beijing over Mr. Trump or the continuation of years of tensions over the competing South China Sea. The Bowditch episode came after China signaled on Thursday that it had installed weapons on disputed islands in the South China Sea that would use to repel threats. New weapons deployment, a defense ministry statement suggested that China was further watering down a pledge made by its president, Xi Jinping, to not militarize the islands. That indicated that such installations were part of China's plan to deepen its territorial claims over the islands, which has created tensions with its neighbors over the rival claims, and with Washington over freedom of navigation in the South China Sea, one of the world's busiest commercial waterways. The United States Navy routinely sends warships to sail the South China Sea as part of ongoing American policy meant to demonstrate that all countries have the freedom of navigation in disputed waters. M. Taylor Farwell, an associate professor of political science at MIT who studies China's territorial disputes and has written on South China Sea, called the seizures of the drone a big deal as it represents the deliberate theft of U.S. government property, violation of maritime law. By stealing a drone versus threatening the safety of the ship, China may be trying to find a way to signal its opposition to U.S. activities without creating a larger incident, Mr. Farwell said. Nevertheless, it will be viewed by the U.S. as a clear challenge. The Bowditch, an oceanography ship, was operating in international waters and carrying out scientific research, said Captain Jeff Davis, a Pentagon spokesman. The drone was part of an unclassified program to collect oceanographic data, including salinity in the sea, clarity of water, and ocean temperature, factors that can help the military in its collection of sonar data. The Navy ship, which had been shadowing the American ship, approached with 500 yards of the Bowditch before seizing the drone, which American officials say was around 50 nautical miles northwest of Subic Bay, the Philippines. Whatever the case, Pentagon said that China had no right to seize the drone. This is not the sort of conduct we expect from professional natives, the Captain Davis said. Michael Swain, a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, called the theft low-level provocation. This does involve lives, Mr. Swain said. It involves Chinese grabbing something that belongs to the United States. The normal thing to do in these cases is you issue a demarche and demand it be returned as soon as possible. McCain, Republican of Arizona, criticized the Obama administration for what he called a failure to provide a strong and determined U.S. response to Chinese actions in the South China Sea. Freedom of the seas and the principles of the rules-based order are not self-enforcing, he said. American leadership is required for their defense, but that leadership has been sorely lacking. There was no immediate comment from Mr. Trump or his transition team. The next article is on the same subject. Come up here. There we go. It's off of constitutionrising.com. And it says Obama's fear of confrontation led to China pirating our drone sub. And it says Neil Cavuto notes the intense discussions in the mainstream propaganda media about Russia, but typically the case, there was not much discussion of China. Yet today, China seized one of our unmanned submarines illegally. In what was unclear, or try that again, in what was clearly an act of aggression message. The seizure took place in full view of the oceanographic vessel that was doing the work and over the demands that the Chinese stop what they're doing. They simply ignored the scientists and took the sub. Caboto plays a clip from 2010 in which Donald Trump was worried about China, noting that they have long been his concern, not so much the Russians. Keane offers his view that both Russia and China want to disrupt the current world order that the United States has led in establishing from post-World War II. They no longer see that international order in their national interest, and they are methodically going about trying to disrupt it and eventually trying to eliminate it. That is what is happening in the South China Sea with the militarization of it. The Chinese have now unfolded a strategy which they have kept secret for a long time, and many of us didn't know for sure where they were heading. And that clearly is that China fully intends to dominate the Pacific and dominate Asia, and they're going to use assist in achieving that level of control. Photo addresses their recent practice of militarizing the islands that don't belong to them and appearing to be throwing it into Donald Trump's face to see what he does, Kabuto asked. Keane says, first of all, we have to make up our minds that the United States national interests are at stake here and those of our allies. Keane says we have to understand there will be confrontations. It's inevitable. Be afraid of confrontation. Try to avoid it if we can, but what we don't want to do is to have a confrontation lead to conflict. But the fear of confrontation, which I believe the Obama administration has done now for 8 years, has emboldened Russia and China. He believes they need to understand pushed around. That's a message they should have gotten by now. But if not, they certainly will within a short time following the inauguration. Things are changing. America will be great again. And the final one in this episode is this editorial piece, and this is off of wakingtimes.com. It says, a real journalist warns us World War III with Russia and China is already underway. Australian journalist John Pilger is one of the few establishment journalists who uses the platform to uncover and promulgate truth, often railing against mainstream media and their role in brainwashing and propagandizing the world on behalf of the warmongers among us. Earlier in 2016, he spoke at a conference in Sydney, shedding light on the critical subject of nuclear weapons and the buildup of World War III. Points out, as already being underway, China are strategically encircled by the U.S. military. Few are willing to speak out against the insanity and inherent destructive nature of imperialism and the proliferation of state-owned weapons of mass destruction, and Pilger's sentiments are both highly relevant precedent as the Western media forces itself into a conflict with Russia, baiting the public with claims of Russian interference in the election. Conflict becomes increasingly inevitable. Pilger reminds us that the Nobel Peace Prize president, Barack Obama, has one of the bloodiest legacies of any American president, commenting that after winning the Peace Prize, the Obama administration almost immediately launched a program to build more nuclear weapons, more nuclear warheads, more nuclear delivery systems, more nuclear fraction. Nuclear warhead spending alone rose higher under Obama than under any other American president. The cost over 30 years is estimated at $1 trillion. And that is a quote from John Pilger. The shocking truth is that the last 2 years, the largest military buildup since World War II, has been taking place along Russia's Western Front by the This is extremely important to remember as the U.S. media wages a nasty campaign to vilify Russia as the covert influence of the U.S. presidential election, even when no clear or hard evidence of proof of this claim has surfaced. The entire anti-Russian campaign seems like a deliberate effort to drive the world into war, and Pillagers' remarks add depth to this perspective. And another quote from him says, not since Hitler invaded the Soviet Union have foreign troops presented such a demonstrable threat to Russia. Working to break the silence and the distraction about the nature of brewing conflict between Russia, NATO, and the United States, explains how China as well has been encircled by a nuclear-armed U.S. military presence in the South China Sea and in surrounding nations. He elucidates how the compounding threat of a conflict of China, coupled with clear and present danger of escalation to all-out war with Russia, is a signal that World War III is already underway and can quickly escalate should no resistance be put up against it. What the role of the media, or try this again, what is the role of the media in our world today? Is their job to amplify and reinforce the agendas of the deep state and the military industrial complex, or should their role be to expose and shed light on matters of severe importance to the public? It is the latter, then hardly anything can be considered more important than putting a stop to the international human plague of elite engineered warfare in which ordinary people are sent to die in foreign battlefields while entire societies are laid waste and countless innocents displaced. It is the mark of a real journalist to speak those truths which have been pushed out into the fringe by the echo chambers of an insane mass media. 21-minute speech by Pilger in a video here. It's the most important message of our time. It says, few, if any, issues will affect us more as global power positions of the people of this planet for the final conflict, World War III. So if you would like to take a look at that at your leisure, you're welcome to pull that up and take a view at that. And that's all I have for you in this issue. If you like what we're doing here, give it a thumbs up, share it around, and I'll have some more news for you in a little while.